A very simple project that I've been working on recently. So recently we had a client, call him a client, but also he's a friend of mine. So this client of ours came and then wanted to understand his business a little bit better. So it was more like you're helping out a friend. So he owns a workshop garage. And so he wanted to understand his revenue streams. He wanted to better understand his expenses, to better understand his profitability, look at certain trends because his workshop has been operating for about now 3-4 years now. So of course, with that data, you can now come up with some trends and everything. So of course, when he reached out, I was like, "Do you have the data?" So he provided me with a bunch of folders of data. But before I walk you through the tool that I actually built for him, I'm not going to show you how I built it, but I'll provide all the templates and everything. But I'm just going to show you the business application of this tool for someone like him, for a person of his caliber. Like it's a small business, it's not so much of a big business. You would ask, why doesn't he buy like a third-party management tool? Anyway, so of course the client provided us with data, and this is I'm going to show you first of all how they used to operate, and then you will see the need or why we had to build this tool in the first place. So this is an example of one of the folders of the data that he provided us. Of course, this is dummy data. I can't show you his data, and then as you can see inside this folder, you can see we have a bunch of other folders, January, February. So of course these folders were coming all the way to December. So when you enter into the January folder, you can see you have a bunch of files. Okay, so we have some PDF files, then we have some Excel files as well. They use a lot of Excel. So and then so you have to first look at now, like, for example, let's look at this file named Camry. So when you look at it, this Camry file, you can see this is some kind of like a form. So like I think this is like they were creating some kind of like they call it a service quote from here. So they were creating some kind of a quotation. Client comes and then you do an inspection for his vehicle, and then you send him a quotation. So what they do is that they open this in Excel, and then after doing this, they export it into a PDF and they send that PDF to the client. So then the client can be like, okay, remove this or add this onto this, and then they would have to do it again. So every time they need to send a quotation, they would have to come and then they duplicate. So you can see this is this Excel file here is for Camry. Then when you come and then look at this one here, this one is for a car called Nativa. You can see, so you get what I'm trying to talk about. And then they would export them and then they would send them as quotations to the client. So there was no way of tracking these quotations, knowing which quotation was actually approved, which one was not approved, which one was rejected, which one was not rejected. There is no systematic way of actually, tracking that. And this is one of the things that he also wanted to know. He wanted to know, okay, I want to know how many quotations led to business, how many quotations didn't lead to business. So that was one of the limitations in this case. And also it would be the same thing when it came to the invoices. So they would also now go again, open up the same exact file, and then they generate an invoice. For example, you can see here, this is a quotation for the Nativa, as you can see in this preview here. And then when you look here, this is like a cash invoice for the same car Nativa. So there was no tracking. Then when it came like to the daily operations of the garage, how they were tracking it, so he had this kind of a file. So this is the one for January. And as you can see, so here over here, you have a summary sheet called over. Then you have like a bunch of other sheets. So this sheet here is the sheet that they used to come and then they fill in all the customer details, and then they would come and fill in the car details, and then they would come over here and then they fill in the job descriptions, what they were doing onto this car. And then you would come to your quotation. Now this sheet here is the one where they would come and now record, like maybe if they bought certain spare parts for the car, they would come here and then indicate we bought spare parts. So this would be like something like a material cost, but it was not like a material cost. This was like the money that they were going to quote the customer, you understand? So there will be like parts purchased, as you can see here, about 2,000 something, and then labor it's about 1,700. So this to them was called as the cost, and then they would come and then over here, and then they would literally, for example, after filling in all this information from this first sheet here, okay? Like you fill in the customer details and everything. So they come to this quotation, this sheet they're calling the quotation. So they would come and then they would manually type in everything here. Like they would type the customer name, okay, and then they would type literally everything manually, and then they would come and type the card details over here. Then they would come here on this invoice and they would do it again. They would again come and then type everything manually again, literally just doing the same thing over and over again. But they needed these sheets. You would ask why were they creating three sheets per every work that they were having. As you can see, so this is work 151, work 152, so they have another sheet here, the same sheet, then work 553, and then all the way. So the reason as to why they were doing that, they had some summary sheet here. This summary sheet, this is the summary sheet, and they would get all these works that they were doing here, and they would summarize everything onto this summary. So this is the sheet that was actually mainly important to me when it came to helping them with analyzing. So you would see, like, for example, this date information would be coming from this sheet here. And then you can see that the car model and the description also is coming from this sheet here. And then when it came to the column that is housing the invoice value, they would get it from this sheet here called invoice WO1551. You can see the invoice one here. It is, you can see it, this invoice here, 454. And it's the same invoice that would appear the other side. And then when it came to the cost, they would take it from this quotation sheet. So that's what they used to do. Okay, so that's what they used to do. So he supplied me with this. Now this is for only January. Ideally it's the same thing when you go to February. It would be the same thing when you go to February. Here February also has the same exact information, then March, then April, then until December. So you had to go in each folder of each month, pick out this file, the one with the summaries and everything, and then after getting those folders, after getting those files, then combine all that data together. But then as you can look at this file, some of the information was not there. For example, like there is no customer details or anything like that, and then there is no car model or the year of the make, the car year make. That information is not there. So, and he wanted to know, okay, if we are receiving Toyota Camrys, like which make are we mainly receiving? Are we receiving 2015 model? Are we receiving 2019 model? This would help him, like in terms of like acquiring spare parts, to know which spare parts he can have, what he cannot have, you know, those kinds of things. And that information is not there. So you had, the information was already filled here. You would find that, for example, here there is car registration, and then there is car brand and number plate. That information was always filled in these sheets here. Okay, so you had to find a way of creating columns. Okay, you would create a column and then pick that information from this sheet and then populate it over to this summary sheet. So I built some kind of a VBA which would do that ideally. So it would loop through these sheets. It would look for this number. This number here, work order number, is the same number, is the same name as this sheet that is holding that information. So what I said is that I would get a VBA. This is the logic behind. Now this is how I did it. So look for this number, look for the name of the sheet, go inside that sheet, look for the customer name, and then look for the adjacent cell that is having that customer name, and then come back to this summary sheet and then populate that with the customer name. But this is not the point of this video for today. So today I'm just showing you what they used to do and the tool that I built for them. But if you want to know how I went about analyzing that data in the way it was, I'll also be uploading that very soon. Anyway, so this is my first YouTube video. I just want to keep it as real as possible. You know, when it comes to projects, I just want them to be as real as possible. Yes, very many people are talking about, you know, all these fancy things when it comes to data analytics, but it's not just a matter of just pulling up reports and then doing all these things. Sometimes you have to look for ways of how to get this information, getting how to make this data. For example, what I'm building for this gentleman, or what I built for him, this is something that is structuring his information, structuring his data. You get, so it's not just all about pulling reports, Excel reports, and then building dashboards. No, that's the role is actually now shifting a lot into data analytics engineering, you know, building ways of how to get that information. Anyway, as a side note, So as you have told you, that's how they used to operate. Now let me show you what I built for them and how it works for them. So now this is the one that I built for them. So all I did was to just standardize the forms that they were actually feeding their data into. So I had an inquiry form, okay, then I had a job card form, I had a work order quotation form, I built an invoice form and a material cost form. So these forms are just purposely for data entry. You know, they're purposely for data entry. So this is just the user interface that they're going to have. They're not going to have to create all these sheets for each and every work that they are having. No, they'll just have these sheets which are always there in front of them, and then all they have to do is to do data entry. Now the beauty of this all is that behind these forms I built some kind of like an Excel database, like a transactional database. So whatever information that they are doing here is being recorded back in the tables in the back end. So I'll show you that, and these are over here when you check in this data. So these are the tables that I built. So you can see this table here in the preview here. You can look at it and then see for the customer table. So this customer table will be keeping all the customer related information, work order. So there is the customer name, there is the work order number, there is the mobile number, there is the telephone, the phone. All this information will be kept in the customer table. Okay, and then we have a work order number which we can actually use to link to other tables. So we also have an inquiries table. So this inquiries table here, this is the table mainly for quotations. So when the customer comes and makes some kind of inquiry, okay, and then you send them a quotation. So you log that inquiry in your table behind in Excel, and then you have ways of tracking it. As you can see, there is a status column here, and then there is a revised column and everything. I'm going to give you an example of how everything works. So these are the tables. This is like the light database behind, okay, and there is the modeling behind it, how each table is connected to another table. You get? Now this will help you when you come now to start answering all these questions that this customer wants, because now all the information is there. Unlike in the first beginning, some information is not there, and then there is a lot of inconsistencies in the data, and that previous system of his is prone to mistakes because there is a lot of typing, and with typing human error and then all that stuff. So now let's look at how this thing works. So before you even understand how this thing works, you have to first understand the business, how his business operates, how a garage operates. That's why it's very, very important when it comes to that analysis. Understanding the business where you're doing your analysis is always key. You cannot just come and start analyzing something just because you were looking for numbers and you know how to use Excel. You need to first understand how everything operates, how they make the money, what takes the money in terms of expenses, and what are some of the scenarios that the business keeps on facing, like literally the business flow. So in this garage of theirs, there are mainly two main issues that are mainly two main routes that I found. So they do a lot of quotations, and they do a little bit of work that doesn't require any inquiry, just like quick service work. So now understanding that gives me the information on how to build for him this tool. This tool particularly is just managing his day-to-day, the daily operations. So with this tool, you can tell how much revenue came in a week, in a month, where are the expenses, and then you can track everything. It doesn't look at the administrative costs and all that. No, it's just looking at the daily operations of the garage. Okay, so let's use an example to better understand this. So let's take an example. Abraham is a client. So he comes to this beautiful garage called Abba Garage. And then Abraham brings his vehicle, gives it to them, tells them to inspect his vehicle, and then tell him what's wrong, and let them send him a quotation after finding out what's wrong with his vehicle. So he tells them what's wrong with the vehicle, and then he goes. He leaves the vehicle behind. So they do the inspection, and after doing the inspection, they write down, of course, this is something that they do manually, so they write down what's wrong with the car, and then they come to you, the administrator, and they be like, can you please generate a quotation, and then send it to the client. This is what is happening. Okay, so when that happens, And then now we have, we start our data entry. So this is Abraham. Okay. And then Abraham drives a Toyota. Okay. And our car registration is ABC123. Okay. The model of the car is going to be a Camry. Sorry. This is a Camry. All right. And then we go to the mobile number. So this mobile number is going to be 1234567 8. So why are they going to be 8 digits? There is now some kind of data validation when it comes to this data entry. Now that is the whole point of me trying to standardize these forms, because when you standardize them, first of all, you're going to put in some kind of like data validation. So like that the mobile number shouldn't be less than 8 digits. So if maybe I put 1234567, it will definitely prompt me and it will tell me the value doesn't match the data validation. So you would have to retry, and then until you put in how many digits that are required for this mobile number. And also when it comes to date, I faced a lot of issues when I was analyzing this. I always face a lot of issues when it comes to date. Whenever I'm analyzing data that requires dates, the date formats, you might find sometimes it's a month, day, year, especially month, day, year, and day, month. So if you are not really so serious, or if you're not very critical and very keen about these dates, you might end up messing up the entire analysis just because of the dates. So date formatting is one of the key things. If you're analyzing any data that has dates, standardizing those dates is a key thing. It's a key thing because for this particular thing, when I were doing the analysis, like the client wanted to know like in terms of labor cost, and then you had to track the labor cost in terms of hours that are being worked. And then that required also to know the dates. You had to bring in the dates. So this car, when did you start working on this car? When did you stop working on this car? How many days? So you would find that instances before these people were actually, you would find that the date they stopped working on the car came before the date they finished working on the car. So be a little bit critical when it comes to dates. So when it comes to the quotation ID number, so we shall be like, okay, this quotation ID is 1004. Okay. And then now let's look at our item description. So we've already done the inspection and we know what's wrong with this car. So this car may be the engine is a little bit dancing. We shall need some kind of engine mounting. Okay. And then we shall need a little bit of maybe we shall need car service as well. So if you talk about car service, you will need to change the oil. So you will need oil change. And then this oil change is going to definitely be for the engine, for clarity to the client. Okay, and then you might also need a filter when you talk about changing the oil. Then you might also need to do something about the gear oil as well. Okay, and those are the main things that you actually found. So the client, you're like, okay, so there's something wrong with your engine. It's dancing whenever you're trying to accelerate or decelerate. So you need to mount it left and right. And then you will need 2 pieces, left and right. For you, for this Toyota Camry, maybe it takes about 4.5 liters of oil. You need 1 filter, and you also need to change your gear oil. Those are the issues that are wrong with, that's what's wrong with your car, and that's the kind of work that we are going to do for your car. But this is a quotation that you're sending out to the customer. Definitely you're telling him what's wrong with this car. Of course, you have someone who's like a service provider who's going to be explaining these things, but for you just have to write the item descriptions, and then you'll be writing the unit prices. So you'll be like, okay, so how much does 1 engine mount cost? Maybe it costs about, let's be fair and give it 150 per each engine mount. And then per 1 oil liter, maybe it's 75 reals, and this is 25 reals, and maybe this is 60 reals. And then when you come down here, you can be like, this is my labor for us to do all this work for you without the inspection fee. Of course, this is something that you have to talk to the client about. So for us to do all this information, we will give you maybe, you will pay us maybe 500 reals, and then we'll give you 150 discount if you decide to work with us. So we shall take off the 150, and then we won't charge you this inspection fee money. Okay, so now this is the quotation. So when you're done with that, ideally this is just data entry. Okay, So when you're done with that, what are you going to do next? So what you're going to do next, you'll come here and then you'll be prompted to save and then send to the client. So what they used to do before, they would create this in Excel, they would export it into a PDF, then they would get that PDF, transfer it to their phones, and then send it to the client. But here it's just a matter of pressing one button and everything. So you just fill the data and then you press the button. So it's telling you, please save and send to the client. So you save and send to the client. So when you save, when you try to save, now this is where the tracking comes in, and this is where now this tool starts to make some sense. Okay, so it's going to ask you what's the status of this quotation. So you'll be like, okay, so this quotation is being sent, but it is pending. Like the client hasn't said anything to go ahead, but it has been sent, and there is no revision on this quotation. Okay, and then you'll be like, okay, so when you do that, what it's going to do, it's going to open for you WhatsApp. Why am I using WhatsApp? It's because like these people are using a lot of WhatsApp for their garage. So it will open for you WhatsApp, and if the mobile number for the client that you filled on your quotation form, on this quotation form here, if the mobile number that you filled here, you've saved it within your contacts for the garage, it will open WhatsApp, and then it will open that contact, and then it will prompt you to what? To attach a PDF, to attach the quotation PDF. So here it is prompting you, it is telling you the WhatsApp chat has been opened, please attach the PDF manually and send. So when you say okay, the data will disappear. So where are your PDFs right now? The ones that you, where are those PDFs? So those PDFs are nowhere, they are here. Okay, so as you can see, this is the PDF, this is the quotation that you're sending the customer. So now you see, you don't have to save the Excel sheet, then again save the quotation, then again save the PDF sheet. No, you save the data, the Excel sheet data, you save it, then you save the PDFs just in case you need them for anything. So this is the PDF that you've just created for the client. Okay, now where has this data gone? Okay, before we had the data here, so where did the data go? Now the data went behind, the data went in our tables here. Okay, these are the tables which we talked about earlier, the light database where the data is being kept. So that data came into here. So what were we doing? We were doing an inquiry for the customer. So when you go, we have a table called inquiries. So when you click on this table called inquiries here, let's preview this table. You can see that the information, all the information is here. Okay, so you see the date is there, the inquiry ID is there, the name of the client, the contact, the car brand, all this information there. Now the most important thing is now you can also see this has been sent, but it's still pending and there is no revision on it, and the net pay is also there, but it is not keeping the descriptions in this table. So where are the descriptions being kept? The descriptions are in the inquiry service descriptions. Okay, so when you click on the inquiry service descriptions, you can see them, all of them, row by row, record by record, and all of them are being attached by the same ID number. So this is the data modeling that I was talking about, that now you can now reference these particular service description details to what? To an inquiry. So if I need to know, okay, this is the inquiry and these are the details, and I need to know the customer, who these details belong to, I can just have to look through my tables, and when I look through my tables, I'll find this inquiry ID in one of those tables, and then I'll be able to link it or merge and then see who the customer is, so that we can follow up in case the customer has not yet given us any go ahead, but we sent him this quotation. You now understand, instead of going and then opening all these folders trying to look for, oh, where was the PDF before, so that you can send. No, you just have to go through your data and everything will be there. Okay, so that's where that data has been kept. So when we come back here, let's assume our client now reaches out back to us and is like, I take off the engine mount, but let's do the what? Let's do the car service. So instead of going again and then opening this folder and then opening these files, no, you just come back here to your inquiry form. There is a button for you, please revise the quotation. So when you press this button, it is going to ask you which quotation are you trying to revise, and you know the quotation because you're in contact with the customer, and this is the inquiry that you're trying to revise. So when you put in the inquiry number, all the information is brought back that you sent to this client. So when this information comes back, and then now the client is like, please take off the gear oil. I don't like the gear oil to be there. Okay, so you take it off, and then when you take it off, and then you'll be like, okay, fine, maybe the labor, it's always changing. So you can be like, okay, let's charge him 500 still, but still we shall take off maybe 120 in this case, if he does the work with us. If he doesn't do, we will charge him that 120. So when you do that, you finished revising this quotation. Now again, you have to send the client now the final quotation. Okay, so when you're sending the final quotation, assuming let's say this client has told you take off that and then go ahead. He has given you the go ahead, but take it off and then go ahead. You'll be like, okay, cool. And now it's approved. Okay, and yes, it was revised. Okay, so when you hit okay, it will do the same thing. It's going to open WhatsApp so that you send this now revised quotation to the client. All right, and then it will save all the data back in the tables as well. So when it saves back the data in the tables, now I want to show you something. Okay, so when it saves back the data, okay, let's look at the inquiries. You can literally now see that you're having the same inquiry ID recorded twice. Okay, you can see that it is being recorded twice. However, you can see the status has been changed. So in the first one, it was pending. It was sent, but it was pending, but now it has been approved. And yes, there was a revision to it. And also you can see when it comes to the net pay, there was a change in the net pay. So with this, you can now count. And then you'll be like, how many were approved? How many were rejected? You have that ability to do that because the data is being what? Is being kept. And when we go to our inquiry service description, remember in the first beginning we had 4 items that we were working on, but now we are having only 3 items are being kept in our table. That's because the way the VBA that I built for this is taking in the most recent information for that particular inquiry ID. So if you do any revision on the inquiry ID, the descriptions are going to change. So if you add something, it will be recorded as, and then if you change, it will be, so it is taking in the most recent information for that particular, when it comes to the inquiry. So when you're done with that, now let's look at now we are done with that, and the client has accepted, and he has told us go ahead. So we are done with that step of the quotation. So we move forward onto a job card. Now the job card is the one that tracks the work that's being done for the car. Before we were just going back and forth with the client, but now this job card is the one which is going to be tracking the work that you're doing on this particular car. So this is where you're going to start feeding in information of like, when did we start working on this car? All this information is going to be there, but you don't have to type it again like in the first system. So if you already have an inquiry ID, there is a button here which is telling you please enter the approved inquiry ID if available. So when you press it, it's telling you enter this ID. So you just have to come and enter the ID. It's 1004. We know it's 1004. So when you press it, it's going to auto-populate your form with all the information that was on the inquiry ID. So the customer name is there, the mobile number is there, the car brand is there, the Camry is there, the registration number for the car is there. Also the descriptions for the work that you're going to do on that car is there. Okay, so all you have to come here and assign the work order number. Now, how does this work? This work order number comes in that this sheet is actually filled when the work is done. When the mechanics are done working, they give you these sheets and then you do the data entry. Okay, so the number on the paper that the mechanics give you is the number that you have to enter here in the work order number. That's why it's not auto-generated or anything like that. Okay, so you'll be like, okay, this is our work order number. So for consistency, we are going to keep it work order 1004. All right, and then now you have all this information about the car, the VIN number and all that. So you can now come in and be like, okay, this is our VIN number for this car. Just some random information that I'm going to put here. Okay, and then the date you actually started working on this car, today is when we started working on this car. Okay, you can also put in the information like kilometers, maybe you're doing oil service or something, and now the actual time that you started working on this car. Maybe we started working on this car today at around 4 p.m. At around 4 p.m. that will be 16. Okay, and then the mechanic who's working on this car, probably it's Joseph. And then what's the year? So the year, this is the make of the car. So maybe this is a 2018 model. And then, so like I said, this sheet is filled when the work is done. So now, the date this car was finished, let's assume it was finished today. Okay. And then the time they finished the work, maybe they finished this work at around 9 or 8. Let's say they finished at 8 working on this particular vehicle. So you filled in all this information. Now all you have to come is to come here and assign the job type, like a job category. So when it comes to engine mounting, this was under, we did the inspection for it to actually find out what that was. Then when it comes to the oil change, that's car service, and then the filter, that's also car service. Okay, and then you hit save. Hit save. Now all the information that was here, the customer information, is going to go to the customer table. All the information that was here for the vehicle will go to the vehicles table, and all the information that was here for the service details will now go to the job card descriptions. What do I mean? This is what I mean. So let's go back to our data here. Okay, so now you can check on our customer table. You can see the information is there. Customer information has been filled in there. Now this is because we have started the work. Okay, now when we go to our vehicles table, you can see all the vehicles information is there. And the good thing is it is referencing to you the ID. So it's literally telling you this ID is the one that contributed to this particular job that we are doing, which ID, this inquiry ID. So now you can literally know which quotations led to business and which quotations did not lead to business, and you can now filter out those that did not lead to business from your quotations table, from your inquiries here. So you can have a bunch of inquiries here, and then you'll be like which ones were actually approved, and then after knowing which ones were approved, you filter out the ones that were rejected and all that. You get? So, and then the descriptions now for this work order, they are also here in the job card service description. Okay, so I think you get what I'm trying to do. So it's like the whole point of this is to structure your data so that when you reach the analysis part of it, when you start to build these models in that in Power BI, when you try to generate all these reports that you want to generate, you know, you have well-structured data that you can actually, you know, reference. You understand what I mean? Unfortunately, that was not the case for me when they gave me this data, and that's what prompted me to actually build this. Okay, now what is causing all this? Now there is a VBA, of course, that is running all this. Okay, so there is a VBA. There are VBAs. I have about 13 modules of VBAs. So if you want to know where the VBAs are, you go here on your taskbar up here, and then you go to the developer. So if you don't have the developers tab, you can easily get it from files. So you go to files, go to options, and when you go to options, you go to customize your ribbon, and when you go to customize your ribbon, you will check inside here, and then you will find, for me, I have it over here. Okay, so if you don't have it over there, if it is not ticked, you just tick it, and then you press OK. Anyway, so the VBA is inside that tab. So when you click on this tab here, you'll go here, the Visual Basic. So that's where your VBA is, or your codes are. So you click on that, and now these are my modules. So I have about 13 modules of VBA. So these codes here, for example, I'll show you. This is a code. Now this code is pulling service details given the inquiry ID. So this is the code that is doing all this. So when I input the service details, so it's doing everything. So I'll be giving you all this. I'll be giving you the template for this, and everything is there. So you can see how everything, and the good thing is I made it a little bit dynamic. So whichever OneDrive you're using, if you're using like Microsoft, it will be dynamic for as long as you have this, for as long as you download the data file on your desktop, and also for as long as you download the forms macro file on your desktop, it will run. Okay, so this is the code behind everything. So there are different codes. So this one is pulling service details. I have this one is pulling data to the quotation form. I have this one is pushing data to the quotation table. I have this one is pulling data to the invoice. So it's just push and pull, push and pull, push and pull, push and pull with a little bit of logic. If this is the case, this is the case. If this is the case, this is the case. You understand? So I'm not going to go into explaining how these VBAs work. But shout out to one YouTube channel that I always follow a lot, Kenji Explains. He has a very good video about VBAs, explaining VBAs. Okay, so yes, so now we've finished creating our job card form. Okay, now the work has been finished and everything. We finished creating our job card form, so they've given you those forms, and then we need to send an invoice to the client. So we finished with our job card form. So we have this form here, which they call the work order quotation form. This work order quotation form is ideally the same as this inquiry form. Okay, but this particular one here, work order quotation form, is related to the job card. So it's tracking the work. This one here, you're sending it to the customer. You're telling the customer, this is what we found. This is what we are going to do. This is how much we are going to charge you. However, this one, you're not sending it to the customer. It's for internal use purposely. Okay, so this is like the final quotation form that is going to be housing the actual quotation amounts, okay, that you are quoting this customer. Here is the thing, not every customer who's coming to your garage, according to this, because this is highly customized, not every customer who was coming to this garage came and then was like, okay, give me a quotation, and then they go ahead. No, some just brought their vehicles, put them there, and then they're like, go ahead, work on my vehicle. Okay, and then so you need to know this is how much we quoted this customer, and you would have to come and then be like, this is how much we bought these materials. So this is the importance of this quotation. That's number one. Number two, there are instances that I saw when I was at that garage whereby as you're doing the work midway, the client comes and then is like, don't do item C. Okay, don't do item C. So when the client says don't do item C, ideally you would have to go back to your job card information and then remove item C, or you would have to repeat the entire system. No, you can do that from this quotation ID here. What am I talking about? Let's show you. So we are going to use the example that we've been using. So when you come to this quotation form, let's assume the client now wants to remove one more item from the things that he gave us the approval to go ahead with. Okay, so you come here and then you say generate quotation. Okay, so it will ask you for the work order number because this quotation particularly is connected to the job card. And then so we know the job card we created was WO1004. Okay, so when we input it, it is going to bring all the details for the customer. Okay, so when it brings all these details, you can see it has auto-generated for us our quotation ID. So you can see the quotation ID starts with QU0WO1004. I'm keeping this number here always there so that like you can easily track it, so that you don't have to every time to have a column for like some kind of a foreign key. Okay, so when you come to maybe like analysis and then you want to analyze, you can just split this column and then take off whatever you want. So this is the one that we're having. So it has brought back all this information that we already put in. So you can see we are not typing anything again. We are just giving it the quotation ID number. It's giving us the information. So let's put in the price. So we said we were charging the client 500, and then we say this client, if it goes ahead with us, we shall give him 120 as the discount. Okay, so now when it comes to save, it is literally going to ask us exactly as the inquiry form, what is the status of this quotation? So we shall be like, some work is going to be done, not all the work, because now along the way the client is like, no, don't do engine mounting. At first he told us to remove off the engine oil. Now he's telling us don't do engine mounting as we've already started the work. Okay, so we don't have to go back and then create other quotations and everything. No, that process is already done. We already opened the job card and we are progressing with the work, but we can take it off a long way. So we shall be like some work done, and then it will be like, of course it is revised, and then when you hit OK, it's going to ask you which work has been done. So you'll come here and then you'll be like, we will go only with oil change and engine oil. The rest we shall not do that work. So you hit save. So when you hit save, it saves that information. Now, when it saves that information, I have a table here for approved descriptions. Now, inside this table, this is where now the actual approved work for this particular quotation and for this particular work order ID, that is where the information is. And that's the table that you will use to generate your invoices. You understand now? Okay, so that is the beauty of this. Okay, so that's where that information will go into your approved quotations. And then you have a table also for quotations as well. You have a table for quotations here, which is keeping the metadata of the quotation as well. So now you can track each and everything. You can see from the beginning, we have an ID, an inquiry ID that was approved. We opened a job card. And when we opened the job card, the work was almost finished. And then as they were working, the client was like, no, don't do this part. So we need to track and see which work did the client refuse to do. And then we will see that under here in the status, it is telling us some work done, implying that not all the work on this quotation ID that was approved initially by the customer, that was done. Okay, so now you can go back and you'll be like, you pull the information from the inquiry ID, because in the inquiry ID descriptions, we have 3 descriptions, and now in the approved descriptions, we have only 2, and then you can know which particular work was not actually done. Okay, that's why that is there. And then now, when you're done with that, you can now proceed to your invoice. You generate an invoice. Okay, and when you generate the invoice, it will ask you now for the quotation number, and we know our quotation number starts with QU, that, and then this, and then 1004. So when you press this and then you enter, so now it will bring you only now the final approved items, which is oil change and filter. Okay, it will auto generate for you an invoice ID number, and then it will give you all this information. And then now you can come here and also revise the labor, because now the labor that you quoted initially is not the same labor that you're going to be giving on this invoice. Why? Because the labor kept on coming and changing. So here you will be like, okay, fine, this is to do this work, it will charge you 150, but then remember, we were giving him some kind of discount for the inspection, so we will charge him maybe something like 450, and then we will not give him any discount. Okay, and that's that. And then you will come, save, and send to customer. So it will literally just open for you this WhatsApp again, so that you can send the invoice to the customer. Okay, and then when you come and click OK, it will also save this information. It will save the metadata, the invoice metadata here. It will save the invoice ID, the date, the quotation ID, the labor, now this is the labor. It will save the gross total, and then it will also save the net total. Okay, and then that is that. Okay, so where is our invoice? Our invoices are in the invoices folder, so you can see invoice, customer name, and the date of the invoice. So when you click on it, you can actually have a look at it. This is your invoice here. You can have a very good look at the invoice, and then you see this is the invoice that the customer will be receiving on his end. All right, then lastly, now this is internal work, so you just have to come to the material cost, so that now you infill, because remember, you bought oil and then you bought a filter. What you quoted the customer is not ideally the actual amount that you did what you bought these materials. Okay, so you can come in here and then you'll be like, generate a request. So you're generating a request for the approved materials that you bought. Okay, so this is 1004, so it will bring only the 2 items that you bought, not the 3 items that the customer initially approved. Remember, the customer changed his mind along the way, and then you can choose who actually bought these items. And then you'll be like, this is why we bought it at 70, and this we bought it at 18. So now here you can actually calculate the actual profit you're getting off the materials themselves. Okay, and then combine this with the actual labor cost, then you will know exactly your profit for this particular work alone. And then you save this as well, and also this information now will be saved in the material cost table. It will be saved in the material cost table. As you can see, there is a quotation ID for reference. So you get this is the material cost table with this, with who purchased these materials, which materials exactly were purchased, what was the quantity, what was the unit price, and what was the total price. So you can come here and then you group this information. For example, you can take out this, and then you group this data by the quotation ID, and then you aggregate with the sum to exactly know the actual material cost that it took for this particular work. That would be only the material cost. So if you needed the labor, then you would also come and then calculate exactly how much time was taken when they were working on this car, and then you get the hourly rate times the time for the mechanic who was working on this to get the actual labor cost. So that is how this particular tool works. As you can see, it's structuring our data very well. Okay, there is a very systematic structure. It's covering all the little scenarios that might happen along way as you're working with a client. Okay, everything is being captured. So like I said, I'll be sharing the VBAs. I'll also share the template. Just check in the link below, you'll find the template there. Also the template for this particular item is there, and also the data tables are also going to be shared. You can do a little bit of editing of that, and then you can use the tool for your services. You can do a little bit of customization, and then you see if this can also help you in your day-to-day. Now, the idea with building this now, you can now go into your Power BI, create models with those tables that you have, so that you can now create those beautiful dashboards and reports that people like so much. Okay, and then you can represent that data and then give the story. So this is the project that I've been working on. Yeah, I had to learn a lot of VBA. I can say yes, I'm pretty good with VBAs right now, and then I had to learn Excel can do actually a lot. So you can use this exact entire thing. You can build using the exact same logic in Power Apps, automate it with Power Automate, and then build this kind of database. Like if you want to build it for scale, you can use the exact way, and then you build all those depots. You can build them in the Dataverse, and then you scale everything. Actually, that's something that I'm thinking of doing, and then I'll be sharing, but that one we shall do it together. So I'll be sharing how I'm doing it, the logic behind everything, so that you can see how to do these things. Like I said, data analytics roles are now changing. It's not just about like writing reports and then doing that. No, it's also about like, getting pipelines of data. Now the future of data analytics, if you're very good with Excel, you can look into the Fabric, how to use Fabric, and then Microsoft Fabric. That's where, because now AI is literally doing most of this. You can literally just give it the data and it will give you the analysis. So if I give it structured data, it will give us the analysis. Where you're beating the AI is when you start now to create these kinds of logics behind, so that you can, come up with these kinds of workflows, understanding the business and everything. And then at the end of the day, AI, you just have to give it the data, and then it will do all the merges, all the relationships, and it will give you the analysis that you need. So you have to come back a little bit. If you can understand data modeling very well, if you can understand workflows very well, automation very well, that is going to be a very good thing. And then the most important thing when it comes to data analysis is data cleaning. That is the most important thing, cleaning data. Very many people don't like it, but that's the most important. Anyway, so that is the tool. Thank you very much. This is my first YouTube video. It's lengthy, I know, but I had to give you step by step why I built it, how it can help, and why I had to use Excel and all that. Thank you so much.